The Supermarine Spitfire Mark I and Messerschmitt Bf-109 are two of the most iconic aircraft of all time, and both fought as the flagship fighter for their respective air forces. But, which was the superior aircraft?
The Battle of Britain raged between June 1940 and October 1940. This was Hitler's attempt to invade his only remaining enemy in the early war. Luckily, Great Britain was fortunate enough to have the Royal Air Force to defend it. At this time, the RAF's fighters were mostly comprised of Hurricanes, but a large portion of the aircraft were made up of the famous Spitfire. By 1961, when it retired, a total of 20,351 airframes had been constructed.
The Spitfire was a high-speed, high-performance interceptor. Its top speed was 360 miles per hour, its range was 425 miles, and its ceiling was 34,700 feet. The armament on these Mark I Spitfires were 8 .303 Browning machine guns, but the most well-known trait of the Spitfire was its maneuverability. The maneuverability of the Spitfire is credited as being the best of any aircraft of the time. One pilot from New Zealand serving with the RAF during the Battle of Britain commented,
"My experience over Dunkirk had taught me that when attacked, the best counter was to go into a right turn. In this maneuver, the Spitfire was infinitely superior to the Messerschmitt, and so, as long as one remained in the turn, the enemy pilot could not bring his guns to bear. And this I did, as the German pilot flashed past, turning as he did so to get behind me, but it was I who finished astound of him. The rest was easy."
On the other side of the channel, the Luftwaffe was launching wave upon wave of bomber attacks. These bombers would invariably be accompanied by fighter escorts made up of the Messerschmitt Bf-109Es. The Messerschmitt was an interceptor, just like the Spitfire, but was built in far greater numbers. By 1965, a total of 33,984 aircraft would be constructed, making it the most numerous fighter plane of all time. For simplicity's sake, we may also refer to the Bf-109E as the Me-109, and for fairness' sake, we will only be considering earlier Bf-109Es.
The top speed of the Bf-109E was 348 miles per hour. Its ceiling was 33,792 feet, and its range was 412 miles. It was equipped with two 7.92mm MG-17s above the engine, and one 20mm MG-FF in each wing. Most people attribute the success of this aircraft to its general high performance, firepower, and stronger armor, making it a very versatile fighter. But let's look at the two side by side. In a dogfight, the Messerschmitt would do more damage, should it land a hit. It possessed more powerful guns, and its armor was stronger.
But a shot that doesn't hit can't hurt. In that respect, the Spitfire has the edge in almost everything that counts. The Spitfire outpaces the Messerschmitt by 12 miles an hour, and easily outmaneuvers the German Premier fighter. Furthermore, it had a higher ceiling, faster climbing speed, and larger range. However, the Spitfire suffered from a flaw in the engine. The carburetor worked in such a way that in a negative G maneuver like a dive, the fuel would move to the back of the tank, which would cause the engine to cut out. Fortunately for the Spitfire, only experienced Messerschmitt pilots were able to take advantage of this. Flight Lieutenant Robert Stanford Tuck, after flying a captured Bf-109E, stated,
"Our Merlin engines couldn't stand up to the negative G, whereas the Messerschmitt's Daimler-Benz seemed quite unaffected."
In a one-on-one dogfight, the Me-109 was inferior to the Spitfire. This is our conclusion, and the conclusion of the RAF. The Royal Aircraft Establishment reported,
"The Me-109 is inferior as a fighter to the Hurricane or Spitfire. Its maneuverability at high speeds is seriously curtailed by the heaviness of the controls, while its high wing load causes it to stall readily under high normal accelerations and results in a poor turning circle."
Despite this, the kill-to-loss ratio was 11 Spitfires to every 9 Messerschmitts. There are two ways of explaining this. First, the statistic includes the aircraft lost on the ground, where the Germans had a significant advantage as they were the ones performing the bombing raids, and secondly, we must consider the terms of engagement.
If the Luftwaffe was attacking Britain, then the terms would likely favour the Me-109. The British coastal radar stations gave the RAF a good indication of the location of the enemy, so they could determine from where to attack, giving them an edge, as they always knew where the enemy was. However, it would rarely occur that the Spitfire could reach the height of the attacking Germans, so the Bf-109 would have the edge in height. And yet the Germans couldn't take advantage of this, as the fighters were under orders to guard the bombers. Furthermore, the Bf-109s likely had little fuel left, so could only engage for a short period before having to return to France. Despite all this, these terms still favour the Messerschmitt, as it could attack the Spitfires, which were focusing on the bombers. This, coupled with the lack of experienced RAF pilots, explains the kill ratios. The Spitfire suffered 219 losses to 180 Messerschmitt losses.
This also raises an interesting question. Which plane was more effective against enemy bombers? Early Bf-109s saw service in the Spanish Civil War, where they were used effectively against Republican bombers. The Spitfires defending Britain were also used to great effect against Luftwaffe bombers such as the Ju-87 Stuka and Heinkel HE-111, to the point at which the lightly armed Stuka dive bombers were withdrawn from service over Britain. When attacking slow, immobile, sluggish bombers, then higher firepower is needed, which favours the Bf-109, but when attacking lighter dive bombers, speed and manoeuvrability is required, favouring the Spitfire. However, both were highly effective against all bomber types. Overall, these two planes were equally effective against bombers, but Spitfires were mostly used against fighters, whilst Hurricanes went after the bombers. Finally, we must talk about the logistics of fighter construction, maintenance and improvement. The most obvious point to mention is that the Messerschmitt was constructed in greater numbers. Furthermore, the Messerschmitt cost 101,600 Reichsmarks to buy, which today is around 435,385 British pounds. This sounds like a lot, but the Spitfire cost £12,950 in 1939, which translates to around £575,995 today. That's £140,000 more expensive.
One advantage of the Spitfire was they were easy to recycle. The way they were built meant the wings or body of a damaged aircraft could be recycled and used on another aircraft. This was a great advantage for the RAF, the Spitfire, and Britain's war economy. This was harder to achieve for the Luftwaffe, as most planes would be shot down over the UK. So, which was superior, the Messerschmitt Bf-109E or the Supermarine Spitfire Mark I? Of these two fighters, it's hard to pick a winner. The Messerschmitt was more heavily armed, but the Spitfire was more manoeuvrable. The Messerschmitt was cheaper, but the Spitfire could be recycled. Both were effective against bombers, but the Spitfire was better in a dogfight. In conclusion, these aircraft are almost equal, but the Supermarine Spitfire is the superior aviation machine and fighter aircraft. But it does pay for this victory by being more expensive.
Later versions of the Spitfire, like the Mark V, were far better than later Me-109s, but this led to the development of the Focke-Wulf 190, but that is a different plane for another day. And remember this scene from the 1969 film, The Battle of Britain?
Aber bitte, meine Herren, ich muss da hart zu Ihnen sein. Ich bin doch hier, um Ihnen zu helfen. Gibt es irgendetwas, was ich für Sie tun kann? Föhn, Falke.
Jawohl, Herr Reichsmarschall. Geben Sie mir eine Staffel Spitfire.
Yeah, that actually happened, although it was a jab at the German command, not a compliment for the Spitfire. But still.
Do you agree? Why not tell us in the comments? And hey, why not share it with a friend? And if you don't have a friend, then you're a loner.
Ha!